Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Witchy Week Ahead. So, this is the week beginning the 20th of July. And I just wanted to start by thanking everybody once again who has messaged me since last week's video was released and shared your comments, your appreciation with me. Yeah, it's just I love doing these offerings anyway, but it's always just so delightful to hear how they've landed, and the little bits and pieces that people have taken away from it. So, yeah, so here we are, another new week ahead of us. I am burning some dandelion leaf today. So it burns very quickly. And we might be able to see a little bit of smoke rising from the cauldron. Here we go. Um, so yeah, so dandelion is a plant ally that I work with a huge amount, and it's been sort of speaking to me a little bit recently, and sort of prompting me to think about things in maybe different ways or leaning into things a little bit deeper. But one of the things that has kind of been coming up for me recently is this relationship that we have, in the collective recently with particular medicines, if you like. And there's been a huge surgence, hasn't there, in cacao and cacao ceremonies. And one thing that I found really interesting, this was a few years ago now, I was on Instagram looking at various things, and I follow an account. I think it's called the Mayan Wisdom Project or something like that. And the founder of this, it's not really a business, but you know what I mean, the founder of this brand, if you like, was talking about cacao ceremonies and how it's not really a thing. So she was talking about from the perspective of the Mayans, her ancestors, that yes, cacao was used within ceremonies, but more so, the ceremonies that they had were fire ceremonies, of which cacao was part of those ceremonies. But this whole movement that has exploded around cacao ceremonies and ceremonial grade cacao is very much a modern invention. And more recently, these posts have kind of appeared again. Other people, other teachers who are like this, there isn't really such a thing as ceremonial grade cacao. And this is kind of, exploded, as I'm sure you can imagine, like the discussions and maybe the disagreements within that. But a thing that I've always been continue to be really passionate about is listening to indigenous voices. And when we get things wrong, or we can add more knowledge and more understanding and more nuance to certain subjects, I'm always a big fan of leaning into that and having the humility as well to acknowledge when I've got things wrong. Um, it's how we learn, isn't it? It's how we grow. And it's one thing that I share a lot when I'm doing facilitator training, when we talk about cultural appropriation. If people ever call us out, I say to them, don't think of it as being called out, think of it as being called in. I think I heard another teacher say this once, and it's a really great opportunity to kind of gather inwards and just be humble and go, okay, I was wrong about this, or maybe I've been practicing something in a way that is harmful, disrespectful, or whatever it is. So anyway, all of that to say, I've been sort of following along with all of these things. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love cacao. Um, I love cacao when it's held in that really beautiful sacred space within a ceremony. So there's no shade being thrown at that. But one thing that I've been thinking about is the plants and the medicines, or the kind of ceremonial plants that may have been used in Britain, for example. We would not have had access to cacao. And so I was thinking about dandelion. This is where we're going today. And dandelion as a leaf, I found really interesting to learn, was used a lot in ceremony for thinning the veil. It was used a lot for divination, to enhance psychic capabilities. And the root, which I drink as a coffee alternative. Let's see if we get the jar. I think we'll be able to see. So I was drinking this the other day and I thought, well, anything can be ceremonial, can't it? Anything can be a ritual. And this was kind of where all this conversation was going around cacao, that people were saying there's nothing wrong with having a cacao ceremony. It's just not historic. The way that it's been kind of presented is not really in line with how the Mayans were using it, which kind of creates this question, doesn't it? If we've been able to do that as a collective, we've taken something and then we've built this whole kind of story around it and we've called it ceremonial, it therefore follows that we could do that with any plant, any gift from the earth. And this is what led me to this contemplation around dandelion, that you could sit in ceremony and drink as long as there's no contraindications, of which there's a few, just like with cacao. There's always contraindications with plant medicine, so always do check. But if you're not contraindicated, to be able to sit in ceremony. So how would that look? Maybe burning the leaf of dandelion, drinking the root, so preparing it as mindfully and slowly and beautifully and with the same reverence that we see people doing with cacao. We can do all of that with the plants that we have here. So if you are somebody that lives in Britain, it's really helpful, especially as magical folk, if we identify as a witch or a green witch or a druidess or a priestess, whatever it is. It's really, I feel, a missing part of the puzzle to be working with the plants that are indigenous and to be rebuilding that relationship, because what's happening so often with magical practices and ceremonies and rituals is this tendency to reach out to other lands, to other cultures. And I get where that comes from. It comes from a longing to belong. It comes from that longing to have these sacred practices that feel so special, don't they? But we're missing a piece, I really feel, when we overlook the allies, the kin, our plant kin that we have here. And isn't it interesting when we look at dandelion, for example, and I've sort of dressed in honor of dandelion today, that it is viewed as a weed and quite common. So maybe we sort of just take it for granted. We see it all over the place. It grows very abundantly. It's incredibly resilient. There's a lot to be said about that as well. And there's a kind of dismissal, perhaps, in our view of things like dandelion and things like nettle and things like mugwort. I mean, I was picking up my daughter from school last week, and on the way back from the school road, there's this huge bit of mugwort on the side of the road. It's like, I need to come back and get that before they trim all the hedges. But it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Maybe we can look at this within ourselves of, do we just step over the kinfolk, the plant kin that we have here, and then pay a lot of money to import these medicines, these plant allies from other lands that, as I said before, nothing wrong with using them. I love cacao, but can we round it out? Can we start to think about the ceremonies and the reverence that people would have had for these herbs? So that's my invitation for, well, not just this week, but for your magical practice. What are you drawn to working with? And do you overlook what you might consider like garden herbs that we perceive to be common? And think about the witch wound. Think about how the witch wound has severed our connection with our local landscape. So maybe for some of us, it feels safer somehow to connect with plants from other lands, to see these kind of ceremonies and rituals that are being presented. Maybe that feels safer than reaching out for the plants and the herbs that are here. And we talked about this last night. We had a women's circle last night and we were talking about mugwort. We went out actually after the circle finished and we went to gather some together. Some people didn't know what it looked like. Some people wanted to know what it looked like when it was ready. So we went out, a group of us, to the magical lane by my studio. And this came up in conversation, this like a blockage to reaching out and having a relationship maybe with herbs in general or specific ones. And this is where sort of the theme of today, I guess, has come from. I've really sat with that when I came home and thought, yeah, it is the wound of what would have happened if you were caught during those times of persecution. Anybody that was seen to have a relationship with the natural world at all would have been persecuted. And so if you think of how that lives on in the collective unconscious, of course, we can look at that from a past life perspective, but I know not everybody has that in their belief system. But if we think of the collective unconscious and how that lives on, that naturally there's a residue of that when we want to take something from the natural world, there's this kind of recoiling or this fear. So my invitation is to keep leaning in to your local plant allies. And that's a massive way that we can start to heal some of these wounds and reclaim our ancestry as well. So instead of reaching for things beyond or only reaching for things beyond, let's have that lovely well-rounded perspective. How can we include the things that are here, in the hedgerow, in our garden, growing through the cracks of the pavement? And this is dandelion. So dandelion is an incredible physical ally. We probably know this already. It's got an insane amount of health benefits. Could almost put it in the sort of superfood box, if you like. But then magically speaking, it is epic. So it is often associated with the planet Jupiter. So Jupiter is the planet of expansion and abundance and luck. But if we think of that expansion, you can imagine that in how that works magically. And then also, I was reading that it's often linked to Mercury. So isn't that interesting too? Here we are in Mercury retrograde. Mercury is the messenger of the gods. So dandelion can be that gateway or that messenger. If we burn it and we're thinning the veil and we're awakening our divination, we're awakening our psychic capabilities, we are then receiving messages. So yeah, a little invitation to, as long as it's safe for you to work with it, to bring dandelion into your magical practice. Maybe try burning it as a herb, drinking it as a tea, or creating a ceremony, because we can create a ceremony with any plant, and drinking the root. I like to make it with a little bit of coconut oil and whatever milk you like to drink. And then I always froth it up in a blender because it can be a little bit grainy. And then put like maple syrup or like something like that as a sweetener in. But we can make, like I said, make it with as much reverence and dedication as you maybe already make cacao with, or you've seen people make cacao with, and see how it speaks to you. And then in your book of magic, in your journal, in your grimoire, you can be writing about your journeys. As I said, this is how the plant has been speaking to me. I've been working with it a lot. mainly from a physical perspective because I've had some health issues and I've been replacing caffeine with dandelion root and sort of falling back in love with it. It was something that I used to drink all the time because the cafes in Sydney used to offer, used to call them LSD, LSDs, which was a soy dandelion latte. And so it was just a common thing that you could have access to. And I remember when I started working at Perfect Potion in Sydney, my boss, Rita, um, she was obsessed with them and she was like, they're really great for stabilizing your blood pressure. It's really grounding, it's uplifting, but without the sort of spikes or the kind of crash afterwards. So yeah, I was drinking it sort of regularly as a latte. And then of course when I moved back, we don't have those here. Nobody, not met a cafe yet who offers dandelion lattes. So yeah, see how you go with that. As I said, do check the contraindications. It's always really important to make sure that herbs are safe to work with. Um, and there are a few with dandelion because it is quite strong. It's very cleansing. It's very detoxifying. So yeah, have a look at that. So that is our herb for this week. Didn't particularly mean to start with that, but I have put quite a lot of it on a smoke and I think I've been completely immersed immersed in it, and all of that has come through. Um, and it's interesting too because one of the comments that I had last week was somebody thanking me for being can't remember the words they used, something like thanks for being maybe direct or honest or yeah, sharing your truth or something. And it's definitely an area of discomfort for me when I think about creating online content. I definitely have shied away from controversial subjects. Um, and I've really felt the push recently to just try, yeah, be a little bit more um forthcoming maybe and a little bit more direct and to yeah, to speak my truth about things because um it obviously has been landing and that's a big part of my path as well is learning to kind of um open throat chakra, speak my truth, be in my authenticity. um and yeah, connecting people to indigenous practices is really important. We've lost so much. And like I said, I really see where it comes from, that want to reach out and connect to other lands and other practices. Um, but of course, it can be harmful, when we're taking from cultures that have been so repressed and there's so much harm there, there's so many wounds there. And as I said before, like I always want to listen to indigenous voices, and if they're saying, it is harmful to us when we see these practices presented in a certain way, or we see a lot of misinformation, or we see the way that our history is being presented incorrectly, where they themselves or that their ancestors were not allowed to do these practices. You can see how it creates harm when people are taking these practices, repackaging them. And of course, we live in a capitalist world, so much of this is driven by being able to sell product or be able to build brands. And it has kind of become that, it's become a trend, now it's become a brand, and everybody repeats information. This is what I notice a lot with the Wheel of the Year. Stuff just gets regurgitated and repeated, and it's like one thing will go off, slightly off, and then everyone repeats, oh, this time of year is about this, and you go, no, it isn't. That's not what it means. That's not, like the whole, I will talk about this when we get into September, but the whole thing with Mabon, and oh, this time of year is called Mabon, and it isn't. Well, it might be now, but it wasn't, and it's certainly not that for the Welsh. And it's confusing, it's confusing for Welsh people when they're like, why is everybody saying this is called this time of year? This is not what this time of year is called. It's just what happened in the 60s when people were starting to repackage the Wheel of the Year so that it could become this tool, this representation of seasonal living that everybody could celebrate together. And again, some of that is well-meaning, that idea of like coming together to honor these things, but it completely disregards the nuances of the various Celtic countries and all their different festivals, their different languages, their different practices, and it kind of just mashes them all in together. And with some stuff that's just completely made up, like Mabon, for example. But we will talk about that when we get to September. So this week, what have we got happening this week? Today, the moon is in Libra. So harmony, balance, fairness. The moon stays in Libra till tomorrow, and then we have the first quarter moon. So moon half illuminated, half in darkness. This is our sign that the full moon is a week away, and we're coming into the full moon in Aquarius, which is sometimes referred to as Lunar Lammas or Lunar Lunacer, which is very difficult to say quickly, Lunar Lunacer. And what I find really interesting about this full moon is Aquarius is the water bearer. Aquarius is renewing. It's like the star card in the tarot. It is blessing. And here in the UK, we are parched. The heat waves that we've been experiencing, we haven't had any rain for a really long time. The land is ridiculously dry. And I think there's a feeling of that in ourselves too at this time of just feeling parched and dehydrated, from a physical perspective of living through the heat waves, but also that kind of end of term. It's really draining, so much harder than I anticipated. This is my first year of going through the school year with a little one, and just the level of fatigue and the strong emotions and the meltdowns that come with that has been really intense. And so what's really beautiful about that full moon is it's coming in with these restorative, renewing, refreshing waters. And this is something I wanted to talk about today as well. So with the element of water, which is related to Aquarius, even though Aquarius is an air sign, but its water qualities come in with its archetype and its symbol, which is the water bearer. We've been working with water with Cancer season, of course. We had that beautiful new moon in Cancer last week. And then Lammas itself, which is approaching, is the beginnings of the water element coming in for the season of autumn, which I'll talk more about maybe in next week's video when we look at the approach of Lammas or Lunacer or first harvest. So something I was reminded of recently was the importance of tending to the elements in your life and how easy it is to focus just on the physical or the kind of material, if you like. So lots of people recently have been expressing how challenging it is at the moment for small businesses, and definitely can relate to that. Everything has been quite slow and quite quiet for me and for the offerings at the studio. And it's very typical of this time of year. Things always go quiet in the summer, but this has been brutal. This year has been brutal. It started a lot earlier than it normally does. And it's been more impactful than it normally is. And instead of having quieter workshops and quieter offerings, it's been a case of like things have just not been going ahead because there's just been little or no bookings. And I'm always really happy to be open about that. I don't think it helps anybody to pretend that things are busier than they are, because then other people think it's just them. Whereas it definitely feels to be a collective thing right now. So I'm not going to pretend that spirit guided me to cancel a workshop if the reason is because no one booked in. So I will be honest about that. It was changed because no one booked into it, not because I suddenly had a download. And I hate to see that, when people are being disingenuous about the reasons for things. Um, so it's been quiet, it's been tough, it's been um financially hard. And I was reminded about tending to the energetics of the business. And this is really beautiful, beautiful story. So I was in the space last week and I'd finished with a client, and we were actually talking about the flow of spaces and the flow of buildings. And she'd helped me to open up a door within the studio that needed to be open. And I'd said to her, my next big thing is I really need to crack on with the garden at the space. So those of you that have come to the studio, got the 4 rooms. It's a big place, isn't it? And then there's the peace garden at the back. And this year I've been doing a lot of work redecorating. I've been moving the space around. I've been prioritizing the shop. It's all been great. And the garden has kind of taken a back seat. And because of that, it's gotten incredibly overgrown. I mean, the birds are very happy because it's like delightful for them. And then the pond that is in the garden has gotten again like quite overgrown, and then lots of like debris has fallen in. And I've got one of those like solar powered pumps that oxygenates the water, and that had got all clogged and it wasn't working. And I kept going into the garden and looking at the pond and being like, I really do need to look at that, but it was always a problem for another day. And it suddenly dawned on me that everything at the moment has been feeling quite stagnant and quite stuck. So yes, I could say that it's a quiet time. I know that other people are experiencing the same thing, and I could leave it at that. But I was also thinking maybe there's an energetic stuckness here too, and it's never great to have stagnant water in your home, in your garden, anywhere that you're tending to. Like it's never a good flow of energy. And I remember my husband's aunt saying this years and years ago. We had a sink in our room that had been put in there for a previous tenant. And so we never used it. And I think she came to visit one time, and she's very, woo woo, we might say. And she said, oh, it's really important that you keep running that sink. And I was like, oh, we don't use it. And she said, no, but it will become stagnant and water needs to flow. So she was like, every now and then, just like run it a little bit or wash something up, so that it's not just a waste of water. But it can really affect the energy of your house, and it can affect your resources and finances and things like this. And I was like, that's really, really interesting. And she launched into a story that I can't quite remember now about another house that she knew of that had like a mill attached to it or something, and how the reactivation of that had helped their abundance and their wealth. And anyway, all of that. So I was looking at the pond and I was thinking, I should just do that today, because I've got a statue as well in the pond of Aphrodite. And I was like, it's really not very auspicious that Aphrodite is stood in this like stagnant, it's quite stinky water. So I was like, I'm just going to crack on, even though the weather was blistering hot. So I'm in there getting all the stinky, all the like leaves that have fallen in. So I'm clearing it all. I go and wash the pump so that it works again, and I cut back all the kind of ivy and everything that's kind of hanging in. So I do all that, and there's never any signal at my place. So I leave for the day, I come home. So by the time I'm home, my phone comes back into signal, and there's quite a few emails. Oh, hi, can I book in for such and such? Oh, hi, can I book in for this event? Oh, hi, I just wondered if you had any more spaces for this. And I just went, oh, lesson learned, flow. And it's not always going to work. So please don't take this as if if you're having money troubles, go and fix all the water around you and it will definitely help. Of course, like I can't make these big claims, and it's not transformed things epically. But it's just been a really good reminder to, especially as magical practitioners, don't always just look at the physical, the sort of material day-to-day things. If things feel stagnant in your life, in your work, in your home, do the practical things, but then is it an energetic thing as well? So you think about, well, when was the last time I cleansed my house? When was the last time I did, I don't know, a simmer pot, or I worked with a deity and I sort of brought them in to into my environment? When was the last time I made offerings? This is the other thing too. Sometimes karmically, when we start to um run out of resources, it can be a karmic thing, can't it? And sometimes the hardest thing to do, it feels really counterintuitive when we don't have very much, is to give. But the very act of giving then triggers the karma to receive. And I always remember this story from years and years ago of a temple who had started to run out of money, and they asked the sort of teacher, well, like the sort of head teacher of the tradition, what should we do? Like, things are really difficult. The temple doesn't have very much money left. And the teacher was like, you need to take what little money you have, and buy offerings. And they did. And then all this abundance came again. And again, it's that kind of flow, that really interesting thing of, if I feel like I'm in a place of lack, how can I be generous? How can I be open-hearted? How can I give back? And it's a little bit like, I read something the other day about volunteering. It was something like, if you feel, oh, what was the quote? Something like, if you feel, yeah, like really, something like really stuck or really isolated, one of the best things to do is to be giving with your time to volunteer. Um, and again, it kind of just shifts and brings everything back into flow. So yes, take it with a pinch of salt, of course. Like I said, don't be ridiculous with these teachings. Don't go and give all your things away and then go, this lady on YouTube told me to give all my belongings away. Now I don't have anything. So pinch of salt, common sense. Don't be ridiculous. Um, but it's really helped me, I think, having that reminder of where what is stagnant. Okay. And this is a great question to be in between the new moon in Cancer and the full moon in Aquarius. Cancer is a water sign, Aquarius is the water bearer. So we can ask ourselves that question: what feels stagnant? Where do I need cardinal water? Where do I need renewal? Where is there not flow? And what can I perhaps do to shift and change these things? I would love to hear what you think about that. So do let me know, whether you comment or you message me directly. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. So the rest of the week, we've got Leo season starting tomorrow. So the sun is moving into Leo season, and Mercury is stationing direct on Wednesday. We're going to still have the post shadow for a couple of weeks, so we can't completely breathe a sigh of relief. But again, thinking of like things feeling a little bit stuck or driving with the handbrake on, that should start to shift a little bit when Mercury stations direct. And what I would ask you to do too is to think about the lessons. I always really love to do a reflection at the end of a Mercury retrograde. Like, what have I learned this time? Because for me, anyway, there's always a teaching, there's always something that I've learned about myself. And this has been really interesting because it's been Mercury retrograde in Cancer. So a lot of it has been to do with the return of certain feelings, but also looking at how I emotionally respond to the difficulties that Mercury retrograde brings. And I've been really paying attention to that in my responses to things of like, okay, this thing has happened, this technical glitch or this hold up with a certain thing or this thing is broken. And I've been really trying to notice the feeling response to that, and how I can start to work to change that, of going, okay, this is the thing that's happened, and this is the emotional response. I can do something about this. Can't do anything about that. But I can certainly not jump to the worst conclusion, not catastrophize, don't panic, take a deep breath. How can I practically solve this? Maybe it can't be solved, maybe it can. So it's been quite enlightening for me, this one. It's been really hard, really challenging, but I do feel like it's been quite revealing. So yeah, give yourself some time, maybe next week, as the dust is settling a little bit more, to just say, what were my lessons, what were my blessings from this particular retrograde, and how can I take that and move forward? Um, the card that I pulled for us for this week is from the Seasons of the Witch Lammas deck, which I love. I love all of these decks. And I pulled us this collecting seeds. I've just made up my own words for it. Collecting seeds. It says, remember that what was once planted has grown, and now it's time to sow new seeds. So I really liked that. Um, and again, that kind of reflective energy that I feel like we're in at the moment with the retrograde and with the sort of water of Cancer, of just kind of looking, okay, that's already come to fruition, or that's ran its course. How do I let go of that and then come on to the next thing? So our crystal for this week, I chose aura quartz. So I love aura quartz. I know there's difference of opinions, isn't there, on aura quartz, but I absolutely love it. Um, I have quite a lot of it in my home. For me, it's quite a childlike thing. It just reminds me of the kind of thing that I would have wanted from a shop when I was little. And I'm very magpie in my um like for certain things, and I like anything sparkly and that looks a little bit unicorny or mermaidy. So I like it from a visual point of view, but energetically it's very uplifting, it's very positive. It's a lot to do with kind of embracing your joy and opening up that sort of whimsical, creative, curious side that maybe we don't so much, particularly as we're like adulting. And the reason I chose this for this week is, for me, this is a very Leo crystal. So Leo, which we're coming into tomorrow, Leo is that kind of inner child. It's ruled by the sun, so it's got that very like young, connective, reaching out, really joyful, playful, bold, um, energy to it. So yeah, aura quartz, I really, really love this. And then from an energetics perspective too, it's really powerful for helping to kind of cleanse our auric field. Again, like with the dandelion, it can be really great for working with divination, working with the higher self and meditation, and all of that. And the other great thing with aura quartz is it's quite cheap. So there's some crystals, that we can look at and think, oh, it's beautiful, but they're quite expensive. So aura quartz is really accessibly priced. So that's another great benefit to this particular stone. Looking through my notes, what else did I want to share with you? Yes, so I wanted to share this with you because we made these yesterday at our women's circle. So this is a poppy seed head, and then she's got grasses for her skirt, or she, or they, or he, or whatever the harvest deity wants to identify as. And then they've got wings. Some of the women last night put lavender in the skirt as well. But this is a very sort of Lammas lunar craft. So again, sort of symbolizing and thinking about um the sort of fruits of your labor, if you like reaping what you've sown. So as we get to this time of year and we're looking at the landscape, a lot of what has been grown has come to its fullness, essentially come to the end of its life cycle, and it's been brought in. And so this sort of represents that kind of gathering in of experiences, gathering in of blessings and teachings from the year, and sort of slowly beginning to put the year to bed, which is at odds with the modern calendar. But yeah, I wanted to share that with you. I've also been making some more witches for the shop. So this is actually a commission. I need to finish her off today, but I absolutely love making these. They just bring me a lot of joy. So there's two more that I made yesterday that have gone to the shop, so they're hanging up at work. One of them is a sea witch, and then the other one is like a Lammas witch. But yes, they give me a lot of joy. So hopefully going to make some more this week as well. And then the other thing I wanted to show you, and I'll hopefully get some time to read these, but my daughter does this really cute thing at the library. So she chooses her own books at the library, which takes a lot of time. And then she'll disappear. She disappears off into the like the adult um section of the library. And she always goes and pulls me a book at random. And what she seems to do every time is pick a book that I have been wanting to buy. It's been in my like wish list. And this time she didn't quite do that. She actually went and got a Christmas book, one of those like rom-com type Christmas books. And I said, that looks amazing, but I will save that for later in the year. And I said, well, can you show me where you got it from? She's yeah. So she shows me this shelf where she got this book from, and next to it are all these amazing sort of witchy magical books. And so I've got this Twilight Garden, and then this one called Hester, which is set in Salem at the time of the Salem witch trials. So I'm hoping I get some time over summer to read these, and I'll report back as to what they're what they're like. Um, I think that is pretty much everything for this week. I think I've covered everything. Um, Last thing to say, it is Mary Magdalene's feast day on Wednesday, on the 22nd. So I am going to be holding a free online ceremony at 9 o'clock on Wednesday evening. So that's UK time. Anyone can come. And it'll be quite short because obviously it's quite late at night, but an opportunity to come together, connect with her story, her real story, who she was, who she wasn't, and take some time together for collective prayers. So there's a lot in our world at the moment that is very heavy, and I thought it would be a really lovely way to to join together in prayer for the collective, but for people in your life too that you want to come and make prayers for, yourself included too. Always include yourself in prayer. But yeah, anyone is welcome to come. All you need to do is join Patreon if you're not already. So join as a free member, and then I will put the Zoom link onto Patreon. I'll put the link to that in the notes under the video. And then hopefully I'll see you there on Wednesday. There will be a recording as well. So if you can't make it live, you can join in afterwards. So thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, a little bit surprised the tangents that have come in today. I blame the dandelion leaf. But yeah, always love to hear from you. So let me know how this week's episode has landed. And I'll be back next week. We will be looking at the full moon in Aquarius. We're going to be looking at Lunar or first harvest, which the opening of that is the 31st of July. That's when the celebrations typically begin. And some ways that we can honour that. And yes, I will be choosing once again a crystal and a herb and a card for us to connect with next week. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week.